Hi all and hi Felix. Welcome.
Hi Matthias and hi all.
Oh, I can hear you good.
So do I.
Thank you so much, Felix, for joining in. I think we thought a lot about it. Who could be the real cool co-designer for our new format, Matthias Meets, and there was no better one, actually, Felix, than you.
I'm honored.
Yeah.
I'll blush. Thank
Felix.
you so much, though. I'm happy to be here in my office, but digitally connected with the ECD. Just glad it's happening again, honestly.
That's really great. I mean, of course, we both would love to be in Munich, of course, now, having a great program, doing some, let's say, relationship in place and having a great after show, of course. But this is how it is, and I think we are still fortunate with all these times.
Yeah, we'll make the best of it.
So, Felix, thanks that you're joining in. I think we have known each other for many years, but maybe for the others, it would be really great if you have a really quick introduction on where you come from and where also your, let's say, current role is all about at s.Oliver.
Sure, happy to. So Felix Jahn, mostly Felix for most people, director e-commerce for s.Oliver Group. So that entails not just s.Oliver, QS, but also Kammer and Liebeskind Berlin. So major brands really, and our teams are set up in a very holistic way, actually covering the entire consumer journey and value chain. So we start with the entire marketing setup, asset creation are parts of our team. So everything you see across the digital journey, both on the website, the newsletters, but also in stores, and in fact even in the B2B channels, comes from our teams. The technology part is catered to from within our teams. Obviously, the marketplace setup and B2B wholesale for e-com, payment, customer service, CRM. We have a lot of functions sitting here and try to make the best of it to have a holistic consumer journey.
To do it holistically maybe is the first kind of hidden secret. Maybe Felix, I need your support because I thought about how to kind of organize an exchange format like this because, I mean, obviously we have many of them, also podcasts going on. And I thought about actually a kind of fireside chat between the both of us is still enough because we have a lot to talk. On top, I tried to establish 3 elements together and we tested out together today for the first time, Felix. So the first element is that we just take a kind of antithesis, as I called it. So, you know, something where we go with a certain kind of a claim and just have a discussion. And the claim, of course, is somehow controversial in first place.
Of course, it has to be fun.
Yeah, and then we have the speed lane. I'm really looking forward with you to go through the speed lane because there we are talking, or you have to decide kind of really quickly and immediately between 2 terms, and then we have in the end we have also the big 3. So we take a certain kind of claim or a strategic approach, and then we try to kind of do our 3-2-1 priority-wise on what do we think about this topic. So I'm really looking forward now to enter with you this, let's say, Matthias Meets format for the first time. And the antithesis for our conversation, as we have exchanged also beforehand, is marketplace, business, risks, my brand shop traffic. So is this a rather outdated one for you, Felix, or how do you look at it?
Obviously a question that I've been asked and that I have asked myself more than once, a prominent and very polarizing question, in fact. I don't see it in a dogmatic way. I see it pragmatically. I always tell people when they ask me this question, this is certainly a valid question. It is just not relevant. And what I mean by that is that I don't make that choice for the end consumer. And that's the very difference that you have from being in a B2B business to being in a B2C business. Ultimately, it's the end consumer that pays the bill. It's the end consumer that make their choices. And I think over the past years, the platform boom or marketplace boom, that is not just a trend. That is not just a one-hit wonder. That is something that makes sense from a very, very, again, holistic point of view. And what I keep telling, if you listen closely, you'll now be able to hear eyes rolling from the people I've told this so many times. I talk about three dimensions and why this makes sense. First and foremost, it does make sense for the platform itself, the marketplaces, right? They have beautiful incremental sales once the platform is established and can, at a fairly low cost, get incremental additional sales onto their platform, catered to by a third party. Great. Awesome. For me as a brand or a retailer, it is an additional platform, maybe even across and beyond the direct audiences that I cater to right now, as in maybe it's in more countries, maybe it's in audiences and customer segments that wouldn't come to my website. So that's definitely also a benefit. But most importantly, it does make sense for the consumer, for the customer, because they have more choice on the platform of their preference. And that is ultimately why this works. I call this the triple win. And I truly believe this is something that is here to stay and won't cease to exist anytime soon. So as a business owner, I just simply need to make the choice whether I want to be part of this or stand outside seeing it pass by. And I certainly want to be part of this. As in, to answer your question, I want to do both. As in, I will obviously always have a great brand website for s.Oliver, for Comma, for Liebeskind Berlin, and many more potentially, where I can freely decide to cater and have the experience and aspirational content that I desire and want to bring to my consumer base. I do not have that choice on marketplaces, but that doesn't mean that I cannot get brand content, good quality products, and good trading onto those channels complementary. I don't need to fight. I don't need to choose. They're not substitutes, they're complementary. And as such, we do both.
And what you, in this regards, Felix, what would be interesting if there's someone reaching out to you, maybe having a strong brand, and even also having a great, for example, loyalty program in place in order to, let's say, also create a loyal relationship with the consumers. And on top, maybe even at that time, kind of has shipping costs in place with their own brand shop. And now it's all about to enter something where you don't have shipping costs and where you, in a way, don't have this kind of direct relationship. Yeah, you may not even be allowed maybe to put the customer data in your CRM. So you're pretty blind. And marketplaces is something where you, of course, and obviously don't have the control like in your brand shop. So how would you answer this kind of concern?
That is absolutely true, and those are valid constraints and limitations that we are aware of. And as I said, I'll always have the brand shops to freely express what I desire as a brand, to have the most exciting and aspirational brand launches, to launch smaller capsules maybe that wouldn't find a niche onto a marketplace, that again also cater to a CRM solution, a loyalty solution that I have behind it. I wouldn't have this entire range of opportunities on the marketplaces, but that doesn't mean that I cannot derive learnings. That doesn't mean that I cannot trade to those consumers. In fact, there's dozens of learnings that we can take away from the very, very big successes of the marketplaces, some directly and with them. So, for example, Zalando Marketing Services, similar solutions on Amazon and for About You are in place, where we directly, as a collaboration, a partnership, try to cater to our holistic consumer in a better and consistent way. So that's one. But also, that is definitely an opportunity, because there are audiences that go onto the marketplaces that I wouldn't be able to reach myself, that wouldn't be interested in reaching s.Oliver.com, Comma.com, and Liebeskind, because for whatever reason they might not yet be aware, and they might not have heard. It might just not be something up to their mind. And that gives me an opportunity to cater to consumers with my brands on platforms who wouldn't even have thought about my product. And that's amazing, especially in an international context. So again, lots of opportunities.
With your, let's say, vast experience around retailing in general, my question would be, what is actually the difference if you look at the kind of 80s and 90s where all the brands kind of shop-in-shop systems popped up, that brands are invited to book spaces and to manage their own stock in a way with kind of third-party traffic, in a way, because they had been inside of a, let's say, a larger retailer store. And although maybe in this shopping center they already had somewhere a brand shop, but they still went for this kind of, space within a different traffic. So is there a similarity between this business model of these really foreign times to what we have today with marketplaces?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of similarities. It actually complements a lot what we'll talk about later with the roadblocks and stuff that we have ahead. People don't like change. And especially larger organizations struggle in general with adapting to new trends, and especially true as digital disruption leaves many players behind. And it's only natural that for brands such as s.Oliver, which have been around for decades, right? We've been founded in the last century and have organically grown in many countries for many business channels, which digital and B2C e-com weren't part of. So as such, e-com comes on top of an existing organically grown structure, and it's natural that there's hurdles and difficulties along the way of integrating this holistically everywhere. And then going back to platforms and marketplaces, they don't have that problem. They start from scratch, greenfield. They don't have any organically grown obstacles or old structures that they need to integrate. They just start with what makes sense for them today. Day one is Bezos' principle about this, right? It's very difficult to start day one in an organization with thousands of people and hundreds of systems that are in place. You cannot just erase that. I mean, you could, but I don't think that's the smartest decision. So I think yes, the internet surprised many organizations and surely wasn't identified as the major commercial opportunity that everybody is aware of today. So in the 90s that you refer to, certainly brand sites weren't yet e-com sites. They were just a business card with nice logos and maybe a career site and press relations. And then the buy online button was maybe still in the lower right. And obviously over time, everybody realized that it should be in reverse, that there is a real e-commerce opportunity here and it should be changed and be in the focus. So it's amazing to see this learning curve across the industry, I got to tell you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even better to be part of it.
Yeah, so maybe as a short exercise, Felix, are you ready for the speed lane?
I'm always ready to exercise.
Yeah, just a little bit
hit me.
to get some movements here. Because the speed lane, as I just mentioned, is just that you have to kind of decide quickly between two terms. And by the way, the terms could apply to both your kind of rather private behavior or your behavior as a business manager, as an entrepreneur. And I mixed them up, so I'm make it pretty difficult for you by intention.
So you're black, I'm white, right? So that's where.
Yeah, actually, one test would be coffee or tea, Felix?
Neither. Espresso. Double, please. No milk, no sugar.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, rather coffee then. So if it's neither, you have to choose the one which is most closer, most closer to you.
Gotcha. So let me prep here. I'm born ready, but I need my.
Okay.
All right.
So this was the espresso. No, the Coke. Yeah, I thought about really the two terms for you especially, but the first question would be Kindle or book?
Kindle. Oasis, the best one.
Okay. So you don't have a bookshelf anymore. You just have a digital.
I think I got some books, but they're mostly dust collectors. To be honest, I'm very digital in that sense. Yes.
Okay. The next one would be autonomy or control.
Autonomy, always, for my teams.
So you let's say empower people and also try to have a long line. In terms
enablement, empowerment. I think it's the only way to, and again, we'll touch on that later, to make any business real work, because you can't just do it on your own. There's no way you can, and you need to enable and empower people, give them real responsibility, and then see them run with it. Make mistakes too, but that's part of the journey.
Definitely. The next one, tricky. Beer or wine?
Beer. Not tricky at all. Super easy, in fact. I'm simple folk.
And then the other one, I mean, in a way, it relates to what you just mentioned, but still, is it, are you a top-down guy or a bottom-up guy?
Bottom up, as bottom up as it gets. It's funny that you should say that because my teams are laughing now probably. I say bottom up twice a day in every sense. And it comes ultimately again from the consumer, right? So every decision we take here, whether it's technology, rollouts, business cases, expansions, it always comes from the consumer first, rolls through the teams and cascades to the top where we ultimately take decisions, but they always are based on data. And data is not something dry and sterile. It is the voices of our consumers, bottom up, 100%.
Cool. And last but not least, car or bike?
How about both? Can I do both? I got a motorbike, so and a car.
Okay, what do you like most?
The bike.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm a biker.
Great.
Yeah, but not a bicycle. It's a proper...
Yeah, since the bike is now also kind of electric, it's getting more easy. The range is extending, a lot of what you can do. So thank you so much for the speed lane. This was the sportive exercise.
Yeah,
and maybe let's enter some, before we go for the, let's say, big three, I'm interested a little bit around the s.Oliver situation as of now and everything what is there. So of course we had been facing difficult times for the, let's say, retail industry, also for fashion and special in particular. And what is actually, how did you went through the time, and how do you look at the opportunities which opened up in parallel by facing all these challenges this year?
Yeah, you said it all. I think, these are unprecedented times, and nobody knows how it'll develop. I personally stopped when people ask me how do you think it'll develop. I just simply stopped answering because nobody knows. And I think there's many developments that showed not even next week can seriously be forecasted any longer. So we make the very best of the situation and react appropriately, both towards customers, consumers, and obviously our strongest asset is our employees. And it forces any organization to act as such and have the responsibility and take it seriously. I think we did in fact make the very best of it because while obviously this had a major impact on all our business channels and business units, I can tell you that all in all, we're in a really good shape. In fact, as you mentioned before, we're using amazing opportunities to make big steps that probably, most certainly, in fact, wouldn't have happened so fast if it hadn't happened. This drastic externality as a major catalyst, I think, for an entire industry. So all in all, I think, knock on wood, we can be very satisfied with the current situation, hope for the very best of everyone, but certainly have a lot of developments ahead, both internally as well as externally, expansion plans, business development plans, reinforcing digitalization across the entire organization and consumer journey. I'm fairly certain they wouldn't have happened so fast if we hadn't had this, drastic catastrophe. Let's call it that.
Yeah, and maybe one of the results is definitely that the D2C share, in a way, is increasing with what you are doing. And I would be interested in how did that change your, let's say, the DNA or also some kind of principles in your company when it comes to really kind of shift into the area of D2C, even with a view, especially, or for example, a view on assortment and planning and sourcing. And so do you see, let's say, across the end-to-end view, where do you see the impact or the major impacts of D2C business?
Amazing point, Matthias, honestly, and I confirm and agree 150%. And that's I think where as tragic and horrible as these happenings are, and still will be, I still try to see the best of things, and it is amazing to see how much of a catalyst, how much of a speed up and booster these events were to make digital and B2C, as you say, the consumer, much more aware in many functions throughout the business that would traditionally potentially sit in the back end and not really, as you said, early in the supply chain, not really look at end consumer data because they thought it might have been very far apart of their circle of influence. And it is now that I have new conversations with, as you said, the sourcing, the product, the development teams, but also legal, accounting, controlling, many supporting functions that are very interested also from their personal experiences now in an end consumer business. And I think this does make sense, don't get me wrong, just as a sales opportunity. Obviously, I like that too. But I think it does make sense to cater as a fashion company. We ultimately always produce products for end consumers, right? A building doesn't wear our clothing, nor does their carpool. So it's always ultimately going to end up on an end consumer. So I think we're all very well advised, both here and in other companies, to look at data because that is what reflects end consumers' behavior. So listen to your customers, look at that data, derive decisions from it, bottom up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you told, or you mentioned already, your kind of holistic responsibility in a way. So tell me something about this, let's say, hidden secret, how to implement the right organization, and also with a view on roles and their range of responsibilities to catch up with what is actually needed to make the consumer happy in the end. What is it?
Obviously, there is not that one hidden secret. Ultimately, again, if I'd have to boil it down, even though I repeat myself now, look at your consumer's journey. Look at the touch points that come across all your channels, every single one. Look at the potential edge cases. Look at where things fall down. Because to me, a great business case is not just necessarily the 80% of the standard journey, but it's the what I call bubble bursts, as in it is what doesn't work and then completely disrupts the consumer's journey and makes them aware of potentially personalization not really being personal, but just fake and set up and automated. So look at the consumer's journeys across all these channels and then derive structural decisions for the organization, for systems, for next business steps and expansion from that. I find that traditionally, and it's only natural, that people are fairly top-down driven, as in they have a great idea which makes sense in their personal and subjective context and their personal and subjective experience, and that's awesome and that's great and can be influenced to creativity and inspiration. But ultimately, again, it has to cater to the end consumer because they're the ones who buy or don't. So I find, look at the consumer's journey, look at the data, test things, fail fast, fail often, derive decisions from it, don't fail twice with the same exercise, and just keep on improving.
Okay. Yeah, I think I just
Make sense?
we are coming from times.
Good enough?
We are coming from times where I heard a lot about fights between the silos. Yeah, so it's, let's say the wholesale guy complaining that the D2C does another deal. Or the e-commerce. I mean, in former times it was much more related to the e-commerce department in a way, and they just treat it as a one more channel, being e-com connected to the e-com warehouse, and so it was pretty much divided also in terms of incentivation and responsibility, and especially maybe this kind of this kind of hybrid, which both have to play on the brand side, from a sales perspective, as well on the retailer side, from a category and let's say rather marketplace facing perspective. This hybrid is, I think, tricky to deal with. So how do you, or how is the organizational structure of s.Oliver today to best deal with this hybrid challenge?
Great point. Yes, definitely it is complex, ever-changing, and sometimes really tricky to run hybrids or omni-channel organizations, which I've done for almost a decade now. So I think I can share a story or two about it. But honestly, I got to tell you, I wouldn't want to live without it, because ultimately that is life, and that is what B2C business will always be like. It is changing, and you need to think about the consumer's perception of things, which are never just siloed and linear, and never will be, and that's great. So I think it's amazing that we have the opportunity to touch consumer journeys parts across numerous channels, both in our own store, in franchise stores, in wholesale departmental stores, in our own e-com sites, in marketplaces that cater our products towards the consumer, both as wholesale and hybrid marketplace business. All have their own pros, cons, and tricky limitations, constraints, and opportunities attached to them. I think, again, and that's where we can close this loop. If you look at the consumer journey and stop looking at yourself and getting back to one of your first questions, as in, what's best for me? Well, again, it's a valid question, but it's not so relevant, because ultimately you need to ask yourself what's best for the consumer, because that'll ultimately decide the success of your business. So if you look at that consumer and think about where they will shop and what they prefer and for which reason, then you'll find fairly simple measures to make this better, one by one by one. There's no magic or silver bullet to just click one button and make it all awesome. No, it'll continuously be challenging, and it'll continuously have limitations and fallbacks, and you'll need to adapt and adjust. But I find it amazing, honestly, and to be able to have one brand come across so many channels, opportunities, countries, languages, to so many people. I wouldn't wish for anything else, truly.
I think we have a lot of touch base with the word change and also transformation, and I think this is actually now a great chance to enter our big free moment, Felix.
Let's do it.
Which is the controversial topic, thesis of today is around roadblocks along a real transformation. So what do we see in terms of showstoppers when we actually are about to transform? And the game goes like this. You will, firstly, it's up to you to present your kind of third place in a row, and then you go up to one, and I will do the same in parallel, in a way. Cool. And so I'm really curious if we have some overlaps. If you and me have some overlaps, I'm 100% curious. Because,
third biggest roadblock across a company or organizational transformation, right? So to me, it'd be organizational structure.
Number 3.
As in departments, units, incentivization, performance management. Mm-hmm.
Okay, for me, the biggest roadblock is a successful business. So, kind of, I have something to look at, my wholesale is running, why should I change something? Always is a blocker for transformation, because so many people would, they tend to protect things, and they tend to stay in an area where they feel just comfortable and are able to act and don't have to build up skills or change the way of working or something like this. And if you always can highlight once more, I do have a successful business, and I used to have it for the last decades. What are you going along? And this is actually more or less a trend. It will go away soon. If you handle it like this, you won't succeed. So this is my number 3. What is your 2?
My 2 would be technology. So obviously, again, it depends on the scale of your business and its maturity, but technology can certainly be enabler, but it can be disabler as well. And that is a major part that can be a real roadblock.
And is there any kind of, let's say, general technology advice you could kind of recommend in terms of look out for something?
Yeah. I think it's obviously it really depends on the area, right? There's loads and loads of systems and processes in any such organization as we or you are. But ultimately, I think similar to what you just said about people's complacency and maybe even laziness and unwillingness to change things, I think at one point you need to just really kiss things goodbye and start anew, and not start adding the 51st element to already 50 independent, siloed little use cases that in themselves might make sense. And at one point were maybe the right thing to do, but at one point you just really have to call it a day and run with a clean slate. Even though that initial effort is tremendous, can take years, and doesn't pay off immediately. It will amortize over time, though. And I think in all senses, also for technology, the effort, the input, the cost to make something really great from scratch always outweighs the fixing workaround, trying to close gaps that will always come up again across the time.
Yeah, then we come back to the existing business, because if the current IT is pretty much linked to the existing business and its processes, there's always also the argument to keep the IT system running.
Exactly.
So my number 2 would be a halfway strategy. So maybe also with a view on what we just had been discussing, is pretty much a roadblock. So just, let's say, shouting out, I want to digitize and I want to, implement in but not really consequently thinking end to end when it comes to organization, assortment, planning, merchandising, all the different areas. Not really consequently being able and being willing to change it in a way end to end. So if you don't only do it halfway and you treat it like you mentioned, like there's a new sales channel only, it won't be successful in the end. Yeah, you would rather be disappointed.
Yeah, it's almost like we staged this, which, by the way, we didn't. But yes, that's exactly why I think bottom-up, data-driven, right? That's ultimately what you have to do in order to do things end-to-end. Because if you don't look at the consumers, if you don't derive things from the bottom-up, you'll never be able to do things holistically and end-to-end, because you didn't even reach the end, which is the bottom. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think it's also, when a new kind of sales opportunity comes up, it's always also a matter of timing. So also when, with the times of the 80s, 90s, where all this kind of outlet stores were popping up, people just thought, okay, it's a way to get rid of my, let's say, traditional assortment, the overstock, and then they recognize there's a kind of additional traffic suddenly, and then they recognized, oh, maybe I have to produce something for this new sales channel. So I have to, I have to change something end to end in order to make that successful and also happen in the end. And this is what I mean when I'm talking about halfway strategy. You're number 1. I'm very looking forward.
It's funny because my number 1 was your number 3 in a sense. So to me, that's people management. So again, I had structure, technology, and my number 1, hands down, is people. And again, the complacency you described is so real. And there is that saying where it says success is your worst enemy for growth. And it does make people, I don't want to say lazy, that's a nasty word, but it does make them stop questioning and stop challenging themselves and others. Because if you're successful, why should I change? And it's that very principle that I find fascinating and very inspirational in the big platforms and marketplaces, because I find from my perception, they just really don't believe in sunk cost. They don't believe in worked out in the past, so let's just stick to it and not work around it anymore. No, they just keep staying agnostic to their own structures, no sunk cost. Day one, whatever makes sense today is what we'll do. No matter how much time and budget went into it before, if it doesn't make sense anymore, then we'll turn and we'll find a new direction and make it better. And if tomorrow is another one, then so be it. If that makes sense for our business, that's the most important thing. So to me, again, people management and making them aware of this need, but also the benefits would be the number 1, because that can be so exciting to see people realize how big of a benefit and how big a success of their own, not a dictated top-down falling down into place, but one they managed and they derived by themselves. If you actually manage to enable people as such and make them entrepreneurs within your organization, I find that's the most and the most powerful success recipe I could share. It's also a fairly difficult one, though.
Yeah, fully agree. Yeah. Okay, so maybe my number 1 would be, and I really put it ironic in a way, would be learnings. And this is what I always talk about, and maybe we also can have an exchange around that, because what I see in our current world is a lot about exponential changing behavior, exponential changing ways of selling, doing marketing, and also the user perspective changed in a kind of 5-year more or less, and it used to be decades, and now we are talking about 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. So the question is, the learnings you have made for, let's say, 4 years ago or 5 years ago, how much of value are they? And I think humans' instinct is in a way to don't make a mistake twice, as I just mentioned with the other example. And this leads then to the fact that Nokia, for example, couldn't imagine that someone lives with a handy only having 8 hours of standby, because they learned that over decades, and years, and they tried for smartphones, and they always had this problem of standby, and by then having this great learning in place, it just kind of prevented them to think differently and also to think about a different aspect of a value proposition. Yeah, because it's in the end, it's not about a better phone; it's just about a better value proposition in these times, where also consumers have a different kind of, let's say, expectation. Also with a view on platform opportunities and so on. So what I see is that when I go into the talks, it's all about okay, they've collected something, you take it kind of serious. They did a successful business in the past, but then there comes the blocker, which is actually they did some learnings, and I fully understand actually. Yeah, why it is the case, but in the end, I think also our generation has to learn to get out of the learnings what is really also valuable for the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And again, it's amazing that you mentioned Nokia, because I keep referring to them. There was a big press conferences years and years ago where their former CEO at the time was crying in front of, I don't know, thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of people. And what he said was crying. We didn't do anything wrong. And the nasty thing is, he's right. They didn't do anything wrong. And that's, again, where I think you're right on the money. People tend to try to make things right and do things right. The problem is they stop thinking about doing the right things. And you can do the wrong things right as long as you want. They won't become the right things. And that's, again, where disruption and this ever-changing environment, which the platforms, as one great example, do so amazingly well. And they just let go. If something, no matter how great they do it, is not the right thing anymore, they drop it just like that. And that can be shocking to the outside sometimes, to the consumers and their partners. But that's the only way that you can have success in the long run. And yeah, I think that's exactly it. So let's stop trying to do things right all the time and make them perfect, because perfection is not the goal. But let's do the right things instead. And I know that sounds a little obvious now, but it is a major difference when you think about it. And so I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think also with a view on the platform or D2C business, it's also a good balance between get your hands off the wheel and on the wheel. Yeah, because some answers you automatically will get via data, and you don't have to take a decision. You just have to make maybe a A/B testing or something, and have to try it out, and then you will see. And I think this chance now, due to this digital age, is with us. Yeah, to have the right approach, to also have this kind of agile way of working, not a top-down concept and fully worked out, all the learnings put in, and then let's go for it. It's more or less a kind of agile principle where you also always have to reflect what is going on out there, and what is going on is steadily changing, and this is actually the challenging part of it. Yeah.
Precisely. And it's funny, really. I keep referring to the car example too, where I keep telling people that, guys, you're not in the boot of this car, right? You're not even on the passenger seat. You're right there. You have the wheel, you have the pedals, just go for it. And that's this exciting moment that I referred to earlier, where once people actually realize the power and responsibility they have, it can fascinate them, and it escalates to a good degree, and it all of a sudden sparks, and they make amazing decisions and find it just fascinating to run a business. And then I think as great business leaders and managers, our jobs is to simply get out of the freaking car. Stop constantly telling them how fast to go and where to turn. Just, again, be on the driver's seat at once. Show them how it goes, then change to the passenger seat. Maybe answer their questions if there are any, but then get out. Seriously, get out and let them drive. Let them make their own mistakes and have an accident, repair the car themselves, and be even better and faster in the long run. People management.
Maybe also this taking off the hands is something what is also tricky, of course, for the other side of the business, the platforms or the retailers evolving themselves to a platform model. So what would you recommend possibly to a new retailer just opening up in marketplace and saying, I want to protect my retailer brand and I don't want to have everything in my marketplace. I want to kind of decide like I did with in the purchase times. What would you tell him or her?
As in, so retailer who wants to offer goods on a marketplace, or retailer who wants to become a marketplace?
Become, and then now is about to connect new partners, new brands. And then what we see along this journey of let's say, developing retailers to a platform model is always that in the first row, they try to protect their brand, the existing way of working, the existing categories, and the existing kind of customer expectation. And then it's all about how to balance out the marketplace assortment. And so what would be a view? Is it rather a kind of take it off the wheel, or a retailer, you should control what you offer via third parties?
I mean, there's multiple potential opportunities here and ways of doing things. If we simplify it, I think there's the open marketplace, so an Amazon or an eBay, which basically just give you a platform and leave you alone to do whatever you want with it. And then there's the more streamlined, catered, standardized approach of closed marketplaces. There's obviously nuances of in-betweens, but mostly that would be the two main kinds, right? So I'd say if you would want to become one of the two, then do it seriously. As in, if you want to become an open platform, be an open platform and don't try to limit and constrain every little thing across the way. But because that does not, in fact, support a platform approach anymore. I think, however, if you find yourself more leaning towards the closed one, that's a very valid approach. And if you have your niche and your USP catering towards specific audiences for in specific categories, and that's perfectly valid. Obviously, it might limit growth because there's only so much of that audience and that category in the retail industry to fish from, but I think it's very valid. I think ultimately my advice, and obviously that comes from the subjective experience as well, is whatever you do as a retailer that wants to become a platform and wants to open up a marketplace, try to standardize things the way the standards exist already. Yeah. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Flipping egg. Honestly, there's so many working processes and systems by now. There's really no reason or potential benefit from anyone trying to do it completely differently now. I still see this happening, to be honest. Yeah. I don't see the reason. It makes the whole onboarding time, contract negotiations, commercials, and daily business and expansion so much more cumbersome and lengthy. Please, for the love of Pete, stick to the standards. There's plenty great standards out there. Try to at least lean towards them. I think that would be my ultimate advice for that retailer.
Yeah, I think we as Tradebyte, at least, we do a lot around kind of educating also retailers and, let's say, trying to get them into a way of standardization and some, let's say, best practice blueprints, which are obviously there, because it's, in the end, reduces struggle on the brand side, reduces time to market, and actually also there's no real benefit in then reinventing the wheel once more. Yeah? So it's not a choice. Yeah.
And that's what I keep telling my teams as well. There is no reinvent the wheel award. Really, I've never seen one, really, unless you want to file a patent and become the inventor of something and be proud, and I don't know, that just let's do what goes well is fast and agile. No reason to reestablish what's been established dozens of times. Yeah.
Yeah. Felix, this was a really great exchange.
It was.
It was really fun, and maybe we see you next time here in Ansbach or at whatever place. Yeah. Uncertain times are coming up. I will now briefly say a few words as an outro, and therefore, Felix, once more, thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Goodbye to you, and have a good time, and obviously we keep the contact going on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Matthias.
Thank you so much, Felix. Yeah.
Take care.
Take care. Yeah, and to all of you, thank you for watching and listening. I very much hope that such an exchange is really interesting for you, and it somehow also makes a little difference for your business of tomorrow. Because actually this is also how I looked at the spirit of the ECD. It was always kind of different to what people were used to in the e-commerce industry, and so this is what we also try to implement by having it in a virtual way. Hopefully we will see each other again. As announced, the ECD Live is now live every Wednesday at 11 a.m., always with interesting stakeholders across the digital industry. And by the way, the next Matthias Meets, we plan together with Otto on November 18, and I'm very, very excited to enter discussion with Robert Schlichter then, running the marketplace unit. So thanks once more. Wish you all a successful day, and above all, stay healthy.